Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this tutorial, we'll dive into Laravel Blade components, which are a powerful way to create reusable UI elements in your Laravel application. If you're looking to write cleaner, more maintainable Blade templates, stick around because this will change how you build your Laravel views going forward. Okay, so what are Blade components? Blade components are reusable UI elements that help keep your Blade views organized and modular. Instead of duplicating the same markup across multiple files, you create a component and use it anywhere in your project. So I've just started a basic Laravel 11 project and I installed it using Breeze, and I'm going to use Blade. What I've done is I've taken the standard Breeze register and login forms. I've just changed the code because they come default with Blade components. For this tutorial, I want to show you what it looks like without the components already in there. So we've got the register file, and we've got for each of these, we've got each input. So we've got a label and a text input. So label, text input, label, text input. And we've got some buttons down here. So we've got a button here and we've got a button here. These are these two buttons, and they're different colors. Okay, and our login form is pretty similar to that as well. So we've got the labels and inputs and a couple of different buttons. Let's go to our register form. Okay, so say on our buttons, we want to change a couple of things. We want to change let's say the rounded, more rounded. Let's have a look what that does here on our register form here. So that's now more rounded. And if we want all of our buttons to match that, to change the rounding, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons. We've then got to go through here and go find out where we changed rounded MD to XL. And go over here and find where's our rounded MD, XL, change it to XL, and change it to XL. Okay, so we've now changed all of our buttons, but that was pretty time consuming, and that was only on 2 pages. What if you had, a bunch of pages with a bunch of buttons? And yeah, it would soon add up. You may miss something. Even if you do a find and replace, you might miss something. So if we make a Blade button component, then we can just have the same thing across the board, and then we can end up changing it in one place, which is much easier. And we can even customize our button as well, so we can have a standard base button template, and then you can just add classes onto that. So I'll show you how to do it. So what you can actually do is you can go into your resources, views, and the components here, and you can just add a component. You just add a file. So we've got we can say button.blade.php and add it there, and you can just start using it, and that component will appear. But since this is Laravel, let's do it the Laravel way. So we'll just remove this old code here. Okay, so we're going to go PHP artisan make component, and we're going to say button. Okay, now you can name it a few different ways. You can just call it button if you want, because it'll appear under components. Or I usually prefer to go button component because, for example, if you have, say, a post model and you have a post button component, and you just, like this, start doing something with post button and your post view and your post model, and then you have to start doing inline including. So it starts to mix up things a bit, and so I always find it, if you name it just like you would have post controller, so it differentiates it, I prefer to do post component, but it's personal choice. So we want to do button component. And what we can actually do as well is we can put it in a forms folder if you wanted, some other folder or whatever. It doesn't matter. You can choose whatever you'd like to do. So button component, and if we use the folder form there, it'll appear under forms here and Blade component. So nothing's there at the moment, and we'll actually get we'll just remove that old code, and if we look under our app view forms, we'll get a button component file here. So we won't go into this yet, just the view for the moment, and we'll tackle this one a little bit later. Okay, so how do we use this view? So the simplest way to do it is if we just go to our button and we copy the button that we want, and we just copy it in here. And instead of here, we would just put slot. Okay, and then when we where we had our button here, we can do X forms button component. And then we put our register here. And we should have a register button if all has gone to plan. And we've got our register button here. Okay, so now we've got our register button. How do we get a login button? Because we've got a different, go to the login button. So how do we change the background color and how do we change the text color? Well, there's actually a few different ways to do it, but what we'll do is we'll now go to that component file and use that for doing it. So what we've got here is we've got our constructor. So we can use the magic constructor method if we want. So public, we'll say BG color. We want that to be a string. Okay, and let's say the default is black. And then we want public string, and we want to say text color equals white. Okay, so if we include these, we go BG color. Okay, and text color. So AI's thankfully filled that out for us. So what we would do here is we would go, here's our gray, our background gray. So let's change that default one to gray 800 to match what it already is now. Okay, and we can just fill that in here like this. So BG color, and our text color, we want that one, text color. And we've already got white there. So if all goes to plan, that should still be working as is. Yes, we've got our same button. So now we can go on to adding our go to login button. So if we just copy this one over and we go to login, copy that text over here. And this one, we want the background color. So BG color equals gray 100. So that's the lighter color. And text color equals, we want it text black. Okay, and if we remove that, hopefully, if all has gone to plan, our button is now working. We've got that. We can also do hover color as well. So why don't we do that? Because our hover color is a little bit different. Okay, so let's do public string hover color equals, and what's our hover color we've got? BG gray 700. Okay, so we'll just put, while we're in here now, hover color, save that, and that's our color there. That's the standard color. So this will be our base button setup, and then we can override it. So what's our color we need for this one? Our hover color is gray 200. Okay, so if we go to register and we say hover color gray 200, and we'll just make sure we've brought it in here. Hover color, there it goes, auto filled for me. Okay, so now that should be working. That'll match. These two will match. They all match. Okay, so now we've got our login form here. We can just go ahead and just copy it if we want, or let's do it. Why don't we do it this way? So X forms dot button component here. And if we use our default template, so this is login this time is the main action. That's now worked. We've got our correct rounding and everything like that, and our color and our hover. Save copying it, to save typing all that out again, just so we can get it right. In our login file, change that to go to registration. And now we've added button components for all of our items here. Now that we've added our 4 buttons in using components, we've used the view file and we've used the components file. But what you can actually do is you can make what's called an inline component, okay? So an inline component would be something very basic that you don't need a lot of variables. You don't have to action much here. This just separates the logic a bit better, but you can actually use what's called inline components. So what we'll do is we'll make one. So we'll go PHP artisan make component, and we'll use our forms folder again. So we'll make the label. That'll be a pretty simple one. So we'll do label component. So we've got our component file, and if you notice now under our forms we don't have the view anymore. Okay, we've only got the components file. So what we can do now is we can take our label from before. Let's just grab any old one here from name, and you can say label component, and if we go paste it inside here, and once again we can just do our public string for, we won't add a default, we'll just add default as blank, public string text, and we'll just give it nothing there. Okay, so if we go for here, so we want to add our for here, and we want to add our text here. Okay, let's see if that works. X forms, we want our label component, for equals name, text equals name. Okay, let's check if that's worked. And now that's appeared. We can delete our old label here, and we've only got form, and that's working. So if we click on, like a label should, if you click on that, it'll put focus on the input. So it's clearly that's working. And let's change these. So if we go email, password, we'll just copy this one to make it easier. Password confirmation. Okay. And we'll quickly we can copy the other ones across too. So email to the login file here. And our password, we've already got that, so we can just add that in here. Okay. So now we should have all of our form labels in a component. So, okay, so why would we want to do that? Well, we can just play around with the classes now. And font bold. Okay, there we go. So we've got font bold now, and that's automatically across to our login. So that's why we would do that. So instead of changing it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places to make it font bold, we've changed it in one place, and all of them have become font bold. But at the same time, we can actually set it up to override as well if we want to. Lastly, let's do our text inputs as well, because they're still here. So let's do our text inputs, because otherwise, if we want to change something here, we want to change all of the margins at the top here. We would have to change one by one, and to change the margins, and that doesn't work. So, especially across a large application. So let's create input component. So we do that by PHP artisan make component. We'll do it under the forms again, just for consistency. Input component once again. As long as you keep the same naming convention, it's very easy. But if you start doing input and input component, confuse things up a bit. So make sure whatever naming convention you choose, you use the same one across your application. So we've got our input component, and we've got our just a standard thing here. So let's copy from name to start with. Input component, we'll paste it here. And so we need, let's just call that name, for example. This is a bit more complicated than the other ones, but let's do it like this. And autocomplete. So we want an autocomplete one as well. Autocomplete. Okay. So we've got name, type name. We want name here as well. Okay. Why don't we do ID's name, or so we'll do name if name exists. If name doesn't exist, we'll do ID. ID. If that exists, use ID. Otherwise, use name. Okay. So if you want to specify an ID, you can. Okay. So let's go to our input component, and let's make our So we've got name, public string name. We've got label. What have we got here? So let's have a look here. So we got so we want name. Let's just move that over here. Here we go. So we've got name is the first one we want. So we also need an ID. That's going to be, that can be a string as well. Public string type. Public string auto complete. Okay, I think that's everything. So what we'll do is for type, we'll make that default as text. Type equals text. So we've got to pass these in here. So we've got name. Thank you, AI, for doing that for me so we don't have to watch me type. And now in our input component, we should have everything we need to get going. And so let's try, if we get rid of that, let's try X forms input component is the one we want. And so we want name for this one equals name. Type, we don't need a type because we're just going to use a standard, we're going to use text. So we will use the autocomplete equals name. And on this one, we'll leave the ID off as well because we don't need it. It's the same. It's the same as name, so we don't need a separate ID. Okay, so we'll just change that to email. Our autocomplete is also email. Okay. And what you could normally do here is you do like required or not required if you want. But we won't do that in this example. Let's get rid of that. Email, so we'll just copy that one across. Password, and we want to add our type is password because it's different to different than text. Okay. And we will just copy this one across as well. So we'll use, for this one, we'll use ID, just for example, password confirmation ID. We'll just have it like this, just so we can check it. Name would be password confirmation, and its type is also password, and autocomplete, go, password confirmation. Okay. All right, so if all has gone to plan, it has not. So, okay, so if we just move that, we've got, there, that's better. We've got them in the, we just had them in the wrong order. Okay, so that makes it a bit better now. So that should work now because we've got only optional parameters if we're using this method here. This should now work. And if we remove the current items here, so we remove the name as well when that reloads. Okay, now we've got it. So we've got all of our forms in here. And let's do the same for across in login page. So that's email and password. Okay, and we'll just check that those are working over here. Oops, we've got an endif issue in our login file. We're just missing something. We pasted over that wrong thing, so we haven't copied it correctly here. Okay, we've copied the label component by mistake. Okay, so we need that input component. That might help. Okay, so there we go, we're working now. So what we can do now is we can change something. So if we want to change a class or something like that, we can just add, if we want to specifically, the email can be, we can change the type to email, for example, email. Okay, and that'll show as, should be an email. If we have a look up here, it's a little bit hard to see. Okay, so that's type equals email. And if we pass our ID, for example, here, ID equals test ID, and we reload this page on our email, let's get that one. And the ID is now being test ID. But if we don't include an ID, the ID will just be the same as the name. Okay, so what if we wanted to include a way to override the classes really easily instead of having to specify everyone? So we've got background colors and text colors and hover colors. how would we specify our class overrides? So what we can do is we've got our default, for example, let's use our input component, and we've got our default classes here. So if we just, instead of, let's make that a bit easier to see. Okay, and we'll put that on a new line. So what we can do instead is attributes, merge, and we want class. And let's copy this guy here. Okay, so let's have a look and see if we've got our classes still on it. Okay, we've got our classes, no problem. And if we were to now specify a custom class for this one, say for the email field, text orange or something, just to make it easy to understand. Our text is orange, but in our name and our password, well, you can't see that. In our other email, it's not there. We've only overridden it. So you can just do. It's very easy to override if you add the merge attributes, and you can do that with a lot of other attributes. Classes is the most common one. And whatever you add in the component here will override any previous. So for example, if we have text black in here, so text black, but we've added text black is our base class, but in here we've overridden that with text orange, and Laravel knows that if you override it, that's the one you want. Okay, so you get different colors there. Okay, so I think we've had a pretty big deep dive into Laravel Blade components, and we've come from inputs where we've had to change everything, and we've made buttons, and we've made a label component and an input component. We've learned about component files with views, or we've learned about inline components as well, like we did with the label component. We did inline, so we didn't have to use a component file and a view file. And that. So I think we've covered pretty much anything related to Blade templates. So you should be able to start using Blade templates in your next project. And as the project gets bigger, you'll find that Blade components are very, very useful. Okay, so if you found this tutorial helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the Laravel docs for more information about advanced Blade component techniques. If you have any other topics that you would like me to cover, let me know in the comments below.